Well, back at it, we had a good practice last night and getting back into just the basics in all three phases. You know, we've had some guys that played okay in the game, guys that played average, and we just have a lot of work to do. We've got room for improvement in all areas and development, and each week is important to our football team as we continue to get guys healthy and get guys that could have been in the last game that get bumps and bruises. Just our overall team concept has to improve. And so we have the same plan as last week, but we just have to travel earlier in the week heading up to Lawrence.
2 years ago, you averaged 5.5 yards per rush. Last year, 4.5. Now 3.9. What's the level of your concern?
Two things. First thing is going the wrong direction. And the second thing, it has to be much better. You know, I mentioned that to you guys a month ago that we don't run the ball effectively enough. We don't average enough yards per carry in the running game, and we're not very explosive in that area. So we have to continue to work up front. We were better than we were the week before blocking up front, but we need to continue to get movement. And as we go through league play, it'll get more difficult. And it is a concern, but we're not ever going to shelf the running game. We'll continue to work at it and develop the young guys, and hopefully they can get better.
In your history, can you remember a team that might have gone from a certain level on the offensive line to a much better level as the season went on?
Not to the point where we need to be.
You alluded to something the other day about Tyreek and being a decoy. Is that an answer?
Well, he's not a decoy. I said he maybe just as well as be one is the attention that he attracts. But I mean, we're not ever going to use him as a decoy. I mean, he's too valuable if he touches the football. I don't know what his total yards were last game. I should know. Somebody knows. Returns and everything. What was it, 175 or something? 200. So either way, he's still getting 200 yards in a game. But he needs to get more on offense, is what you're alluding to, and you're right. We need to find more ways to get him the ball. But we'll go back to offensive philosophy and defensive philosophy from day one. They can stop him, I guess, from getting the ball if they want, which most teams are very attracted to him when he's on the field.
I guess my question was, did you stumble across something the other day? Not that you want to use him as a decoy throughout the game, but you felt like things opened up a little bit. Is that something that you'll use here and there and try to take advantage of?
Well, in the second half, when we put him over there stacked, they moved so many people in that direction, and every division was over there so much that we just started playing the other side of the field. So we've often thought about that, but we would prefer for him to touch the ball more than be used as a decoy. But it's not out of the question at times.
How was he consistently on Sundays and Mondays in terms of recovering from football games?
He's done very well. That's a concern of ours. We have gone to the extreme to make sure that he's somewhat fresh on Tuesday, more on Wednesday, and then we cut back with him on Thursday to get him to where he can run at a fast pace on Saturday. And up to this point, he's done fine. Week 8 and 9 is always a concern for us with a player that gets as many reps as he does in so many different locations, and then also your freshman.
Second straight year you've had a guy come in from a previous program with Furman this year. How impressed are you with those two guys, Patton last year, Furman this year, that they were able to make that easy transition to the program and start career defense?
You know, Patman came in, and obviously he's playing for the Cowboys now, so he's done very well. The transition was smooth and really contributed to our team, and I'm hoping that Furman's heading in that same direction. He was the player of the game for us last week. He had 7 tackles and a big sack, another sack or I call it a sack, whatever, tackle for a loss, and then made some nice plays. So I think they're comfortable in our system. This is a player-friendly environment here where they can have success early because we're not very complicated. We don't stress their body and their legs, and I think that they're maybe a little more comfortable in our system at an earlier time than they would be maybe at a different school.
Has it helped in the fact that he's kind of versatile. I know Glenn mentioned that you don't really have to pull him out if you shift packages because his ability to play some safety or back or linebacker.
I think they're learning that as we go through the season. I'm not sure that we all knew what we were going to get from him a month ago, just like Patman. As the season went on last year, we used him in different packages based on the teams we were playing. He could play some corner, and then we could bring him in as a nickel or dime back, and even play him as a safety some based on the teams and what we thought their strengths were. And hopefully Furman will give us some flexibility as we move through the season.
Mike, with your pedigree as a quarterback and an offensive side of the ball coach, these guys have been kind of your natural enemy, but as a head coach, you have to appreciate having one. Talk about Ofa. He doesn't make all the plays, but usually something Ofa does on that defensive inside causes things to happen.
He's a physical presence. He's hard to move. He likes to play. He's learning to play at a high level. He's in good shape now. Coach Glass has done a really nice job with him over the last year. And our team rallies around him. The guys like him. He's always been my 10-year-old's favorite player because of his hair. And the other players like his culture and what he brings to the table. And he's really done a good job of handling himself because he gets upset, which helps him. You want defensive linemen that have bad attitudes towards the other team, but then you can settle him down really good. So he's been a great addition to our team over the last 2 years, and wish he had another year.
In regards to Patman and Furman for you this year, is there an element of having a vision for a guy to come in and what kind of a role he can fill? Because Furman's obviously playing a different, didn't play much in Michigan, and you guys put him in a star role, and it seems like it's just like made for him.
There's more phone calls that take place in the off season now than there ever have been. Players graduate earlier than they used to years ago, so they can take advantage of that rule and allow them to transfer and play. And so we've tried to do the best we could of weeding out the guys that we thought fit in our system or didn't fit, and brought in the guys that we thought did fit in our system, just based on what our needs could have been. We looked for an offensive lineman this year because we were so young that we thought maybe we could catch a guy that had played that was graduating. But we can't call them, but we kind of scanned and looked, and we're hoping we would get a call, and we didn't. But Furman just happened to show up and at a position where we needed some maturity.
Mike, you said a couple weeks ago that you weren't using much of your playbook at that point. Is that more of a Dax thing, or is that more not being able to run the ball real effectively at this point?
There's three things now. One is Dax, two is the offensive line, and three, we can't run the ball very well. So we're basic vanilla for the most part, and until we improve in some areas, it's difficult for us to really get out of our box, and we have to do the best we can with the inexperience we have at those positions.
You talk about, you mentioned the other day after the game about Jeff Coate and how, he paid his own way and earned himself a scholarship. It sounds like he's the kind of guy who everybody was really excited for when he made the big play. How much does that kind of bring the team together to see a young, a guy like that who's worked so hard to come up and make a big play like that?
We have 50 players on our team that pay their own way, and we have 85, give or take a few, that we pay for. And so the one thing that we've done here is all of them are treated the same, with the exception of we can't pay for their school. They get academic support, and now they get food, which is awesome. So they get the advantage of everything except for their room, boards, books, tuition, and fees. And when the players see a guy work hard like that, and we draw attention to it, we tell them that there's certain guys that are out here really, and they're getting a free ride. They're not paying a price, and we have other guys that should get this assistance, or they're busting their tail and trying to do it the right way, and we make a point of that. And the players enjoy that. When we showed that tape Saturday or Sunday night, they get a big kick out of it, and they're happy for a guy because they know he's paid the price. He has to put a lot of time and effort into just being a college football player, and then he has everything else on the side.
Mike, it got put out on Twitter that Zach Veach was your offensive player of the game. What went into that decision? Just looking at film, did he impress?
I think by default. I'm not sure who put it out there, but he improved a little bit, made a few plays, and I give Zach a hard time, but he's a tough guy that tries to play as physical as possible. And on a serious note, he was really good and had a high percentage on his decision on who to block, in, out, up on the backer. He graded out really high in those areas.
You have to go to a second quarterback. I guess the circumstances are ideal in that you had a bunch of home games to get him acclimated. But now you go on the road for a while, and I just wonder how what does he have, 300 plays under his belt now? How do you think he'll react to playing on the road?
Dax? Oh, I think he'll be fine. I really do. Once he gets out there in our system, I don't know that they know that there's really any difference in where they're at. But nobody will know until it happens, but I think he'll be fine.
Like Lawrence is different than this place because this place knocks the wind down real good. Not necessarily at Lawrence. I don't know what the forecast is, but chances are
65, 11-mile-an-hour winds. I mean, I'm just answering your question, but you're right. I mean, when you're on the road and stadiums are different, noise levels different, wind swirling, and I mentioned that the other day, and here somebody asked me about, I think it was Hoover asked me about offenses like ours that throw the ball down the field. And weather can be a factor at times, not necessarily cold weather, but winds, precipitation, things like that. We just kind of have to cross that bridge. I would think with him, as well as the ball comes out of his hand, that he should be able to cut through the wind. In most cases, guys like myself that the ball fluttered some, the wind could really be a factor. But guys that the ball spins really well, it cuts through there pretty good.
I guess the best guys to coach are the ones who don't make the same mistakes a third or fourth time. Mm-hmm. How is he in that way?
He's done well. He's graded out really high in his reads, and we ask our quarterbacks to do a lot. We're fairly simple, but our quarterbacks do a lot. And he had, I think, 34 key reads, and he was good on 28 of them, and that's not bad. He certainly needs to avoid turning the ball over. Some of his throws Saturday that were intercepted weren't necessarily him, because he is going to throw the ball on time. And when he does, we need our players to be in the right spot. So there's kind of a two-way street there, but he has to learn and progress as we go through this.
A few weeks ago, you said you tell your coaches that when young kids get in the game, they're going to play better than you expect them to. Mm-hmm. You've had some guys kind of be forced in there, and it looks like Richards, Flowers, and some of these guys have done that.
Just in doing this for a long time, I believe that if they're coached that way, there's always an experience standpoint, and you see it where a player can be vulnerable, and they'll still get it. For example, a corner, they'll get double moved, and they'll look bad. As they get older, they learn to kind of accept that, and if they get beat, it's not that bad. Lampkin went through it. There was times when Lampkin played when he was a freshman, and it didn't look good at all. So they all go through it, and offensive linemen go through it, and certainly other positions. But the point I'm making is that if they're the guy that's going to play in the game, they're getting the reps during the week, so they're getting coached. And the guys that are getting coached are going to play better than you think because they're getting the quality reps in practice. If not, then that means we're not coaching very good.
I'm guessing you'd be pretty pleased with the way some of these guys have done, Richards.
I'm very pleased with all of our young guys, including the offensive line. We're just not very good, but they're still doing okay for where they're at in their careers. If not, we'd make a change. We'd put somebody else in there. There's just not really a fast forward button in developing young players.
Mike, it's now been 2 months that you guys have had the meal difference for snacks and unlimited meals and stuff. Have you noticed a difference in guys' energy and just what you're getting out of that?
I think so. What happens is, like when we're all college students, we run from one place, sleep as late as we can, we try to get to class, and then we go to the next location that we're supposed to be, and we don't eat right, stay up too late, all those different areas. Well, all the food and nutrition they need now is here for them, so they walk right by it. okay? And I guess really we're all the same way in our professional. You know, if Kevin and Gavin set something up here, y'all will grab it on the way out. If you have to go to the end of the hall, you may not do it. Well, they're the same way. I mean, it's all sitting there right in front of them, and so they can get their hands on it really easy.
I talked to a guy at Big 12 Media Day from another Big 12 school who was talking about caloric intake, and I think especially with linemen, just how much they were asked to get, and he said I was having to get it through, you know, junk food, and I mean, he said he really started to notice a change once he started to eat better.
We had a player, a good example of that is we had a player who was gaining weight a year ago the wrong way, and so we looked into why it was happening, and he didn't have the benefit of eating with us. We didn't have the availability we do now, and so he was like any other college student, and he was running and driving through McDonald's and getting a $1 menu, things like that all the time. And over a period of time, it's going to have an effect on your body.
Mike, you have 2 games in Kansas this year. Joe Bob Clemens says the Kansas State connection. Make you confident you can get some of those guys to get more interest in coming to OSU and be successful recruiting them?
We've had some success in Kansas. You know, Kansas State, Nebraska, Oklahoma will go up there some. Arkansas will come across there. Other than that, really, you don't see a lot of other schools there. And I think that we have a favorable reputation in that area. It's fairly easy to get to. A lot of the lifestyle in our community is similar to the communities in Kansas. And, you know, I said this a year ago, Oklahoma and Kansas football has gotten considerably better and has more players that have done well in college than what people think. And so we've put a little more time into that area.
So in a month, you've gone from unranked to 16th in the country. When you look at what's ahead of you and what's behind you on the poll, you think that's about where we belong right now?
I'm not so sure, yeah. Well, I'm not so sure that we're 16th in the country, but I'm not so sure that anybody ahead of us or behind us belongs where they're supposed to be either. The parity from years ago, like we've talked about, continues to grow. And you guys watch and keep up with the game more than I do, but late night games, you know, Arizona barely got out of San Antonio a month ago, and they threw a Hail Mary to beat Cal, and they went into Oregon and, for the most part, controlled that game, and they were an unranked team. So I don't know that anybody can really figure out what's going on week to week, and it just proves to us and our players and everybody that when you go into a Saturday, unless you're really good, you know, you have to play fairly well in order to get a win, and everybody's vulnerable for the most part. I would say there may be some teams that are physically just better than everybody that may be able to hold up, but I don't know that there's a lot of those teams out there at this time.
I'm not trying to take a shot at Kansas with this, but you put a lot of work with the sound system and so forth into preparing to go in and play in tough atmospheres. This one's typically not one of them. In fact, it can be somewhat dead at times. Is that a concern? Because players tend to feed off, whether it's positive or negative, they tend to feed off what's coming out of the...
They need to self-start. We didn't start very good on Saturday. And it was an early morning game, and you know there wasn't that many people at the game, and we let ourselves get put to sleep. A coach's fault, player's fault. I don't know whose fault it was, but there's a lot of truth to what you're saying, and mature teams have to learn to self-start and start fast and play with a lot of energy.
Combination of 2 years ago, the 2012 game you had at Kansas, plus knowing that they're just starved to death for something positive up there. Does that provide enough motivation? And does it concern you to take a team up there?
Well, I'm concerned in every game with these young guys. There's not a game that we've gone into that I don't have concern. And our players, I think, understand the importance of preparation. And even though they're young, most of them have followed us or have been around us enough to know that just what we talked about. I used a couple examples of teams that most people thought didn't have any chance to win and won. And they're going to put a game plan together, and if you watch their tape defensively, they slow people down. I mean, the teams aren't going up and down the field on them. They're hitting a big pass here or there. They're breaking some tackles and getting a big run, but just consistent drives down the field on their defense is not happening. And so there's always an issue there. And I'm sure that they would like to settle in and play better on offense. I'm not either way, but the important thing is our players have to understand that. And we're not in a position to just go up there and be able to play average for a quarter and a half or a half and then expect to just come out and win.
I don't know how much you watch the NFL every Sunday, but yesterday the Cowboys had both Des Bryant and Dan Bailey with big plays to win the game for them. How much pride do you take in seeing your former players do that?
Well, we have we get a big kick out of that. I don't see any NFL games very often. I certainly get caught up with my kids at home when the Cowboys make plays. They call or tell me, and we take a lot of pride in those guys, and they continue to do well. Des may be as exciting a player as anybody in the NFL, and kicker's pretty good, and so we take a lot of pride in those guys. They're certainly a great marketing tool for Oklahoma State and Oklahoma State football.
Coach Gundy, what happens if Dax Garman loses his helmet on a play?
I don't have to cross that bridge right now. We've taken that into consideration, but we haven't had to cross that bridge. We put a double chin strap on him.
Wildcat.
We haven't had to cross that bridge yet. So good.
How much better is Dan Bailey now than he was when he was here? Because he was pretty good here.
When Dan was when he first showed up here, in his first year, we almost cut him because he was not very good at all. Very seldom could he make field goals in practice, and there's always guys walking on wanting to try to be a kicker and a punter. So he got a little better, but for a while there, we almost just moved him on. We said we got to get somebody else in here and try him. And then something kicked in, and he kicked good here. And then obviously now he's unbelievable. So I don't know what is he, like 98 of 107 or something. So I would say he's taken it to a complete different level.
He's the most accurate kicker in the history of the NFL.
I think if he makes his next one, he'll be the most accurate.
Next one.
Yeah, I mean they put him in to kick a 49-yarder on third down. I mean,
So what made you keep him? Did he turn the corner before you cut him loose?
I'd love to give you some great story that I saw something in him, but I don't know. I can't remember because it's been so long ago.
I think his roommate vouched for him.
Yeah, I honestly I can't remember, but I can remember us watching him and thinking, he's a good kid, but we're gonna have to get somebody else in here. And then maybe the spring was over or something, and before we knew it, he was back out there in the fall. And who kicked before him? Somebody kicked before him,
Yeah,
and
Ricks.
right, and then was struggling a little bit, right? And that's how it happened. But I don't remember why we did, but I'm sure glad we did.
Ricks missed the kick against Texas.
Yeah, and the next
Down
one.
here to
From
win the
that
game,
point,
right?
It was Dan's job from then on.
How about Brandon Whedon? I mean, what was behind how much did you think a guy who just played 4 years of professional baseball could come in here and play?
He just showed up here. We recruited him in high school, but then we knew he was going to be a high-round pick, and he made it clear he was going to sign, so we stopped recruiting him. And then he just showed up here one day and said he wanted to play, and we just let him, and we didn't really pay much attention to it.
A whole lot. I mean, you couldn't have had a whole lot of expectations at that point.
I didn't have hardly any because most minor league baseball players that come to play college football are a long ways away from a structure standpoint. They've been riding on Greyhound buses, staying up all night, getting to the next location, playing games, and the structure has just been limited compared to what we have here. And it usually just doesn't work out. And we've been fortunate with two guys, Tyler Johnson and Whedon both.
We're going down memory lane. How did Zach show up on your list?
Well, I recruited him. Zach Robinson?
No, Dax Garman.
Oh, Dax. That's a long story. Dax is from back really where I'm from, and his mom is a twin, and they're the same age as we are, and so they kind of knew us, and we kind of knew them. And then when he came back here, I think he had some distance ties with me because of that, and the offense. And then next thing he showed up and wanted to walk on.
The number of quarterbacks quarterbacks you had at the point he walked on, though, he's as likely to maybe never play it down for you guys as to be your starter, right?
Right. You'd have to ask him that. I never really asked him that. I knew that we had some connection and ties there just because of both of us being from the same area. But why he ultimately decided to come here, I can't say for sure.
With a guy like that, like Whedon and even Johnson, what clicks to, just for a guy, when you say most guys wouldn't be able to make that adjustment, what was the key for those guys?
Well, they just have to decide on their own. Whedon was here for a couple years, and our offense didn't fit what he did, and he was redshirting, and Zach was going to be the starter, and I think he knew that, and he was just kind of rolling with the punches. And then Tyler came in here as a backer and got bigger and stronger, but he was pretty disciplined and structured from day one, learned to develop some toughness, and then came back and grew into a defensive end and a good pass rusher and ended up playing. So. Good? All right. Is that the horn or what?